Let's check out Samsung's Galaxy S23 Ultra in 2025 here, guys. I wanted to drop an independent video on this phone. It's one of my favorite flagships to recommend to people who don't want to spend, $800, $1,000, over $1,000 on a phone. This is really the sweet spot. This really does everything that a $1,000 plus phone does now. And if you pick it up in the used refurbished marketplace, and this one I have right here is a used refurbished model. Most of the phones, if you don't see me unbox them new, it came from like Amazon, eBay. And you can see 600 for a excellent version, and then 550 for a good version. So these are starting to come down in price a little bit. I think by middle of this year to closer to the end of this year, you'll be able to get a excellent version for 550, which, like I said, is an excellent deal. So let's go ahead and just talk about it. So one thing that I really like about this phone compared to the new S25 Ultra, which I did that comparison if you guys want to check that out, is Samsung made they made this phone like really sharp and boxy looking, which I really like how that looks. I think it looks better than the new kind of curved design, even though this feels more comfortable to hold. So I just do like the design. So it's kind of like a win-lose situation for me. But yeah, I really like the design. The matte finish still looks great. I really like this kind of color, even though it doesn't look super purple. It kind of looks almost kind of pinkish. But I really like the side of the phone. I just like the overall design. It still has the Bluetooth S Pen, which a lot of people, you may or may not care about the Bluetooth S Pen. And I'm not gonna say like, oh, I was a big user of the Bluetooth S Pen. I wasn't, but I know a lot of my subscribers were, so that's why. And them just taking it out was such a weird thing, because again, it's an Ultra phone, so it has to be able to do the small little bells and whistles that maybe not a lot of people. It's like Samsung desktop support. Do a lot of people use Samsung desktop support? No, but why take it out for the maybe the smaller minority of people that do, right? So it's just an interesting thing, but it still has that. And then also hardware wise, like I said, it looks great. IP68 dust and water resistant, and honestly doesn't really look that different from the newest models, right? Display still looks great on the S23 Ultra here. It still has those really nice vivid colors. And overall, it is a curved display, which a lot of people, just based off that fact, they were like, oh, I really want to upgrade to the flat display, whether you go to an S25 or an S24. I don't mind the curved display. I don't really think it's a big deal. Yeah, it's easier to put screen protectors on a flat display, so I do get it, but is that worth like that extra money to upgrade? It really depends on how much that annoys you. But yeah, the display itself honestly has not really changed. Yes, the newer displays do have LTPO, but it doesn't really bother me. Like, the battery life is still pretty good, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But this has basically the same display as the newer displays. It's just as good. You have a 6.8-inch 1440p panel, and it still gets super bright as well too. You don't really need like a crazy max brightness like the newer phones do 2600, but in most cases I can still see the S23 outdoors in direct sunlight. It's 1750 nits. It's not like I can't see it. And 500 for the PPI, so everything is sharp. Like, all the icons look really sharp and stuff like that. So yeah, I think the display looks really good. They've flattened the bezels out a lot on the newer models, but it's just an aesthetic thing. Most people won't really care about that anyway. So the display looks really good on the S23 still. Let's talk about these specs a little bit more. The number one thing that makes the S23 Ultra age so well is this actual Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor here. So we have excellent performance. In PUBG, we can still play at 120 frames. Call of Duty, we can still play really great frames. And the only thing here is we do have 256 gigs and 8 gigs around the base model. If you do get the 12 gigabyte of RAM model, then you can have a lot more multitasking ability. But even on this 8 gig version, I do not ever run into performance problems with this phone. And I'm not really a heavy multitasker or anything like that. But yeah, it just doesn't really heat up for me. I just never hear people saying bad things about the S23 Ultra's processor here, this 8 Gen 2. And the cool thing about this phone is this model did not launch with a Exynos version, so everyone got the Snapdragon model, which is pretty nice. So that is also another thing that a lot of people complain about is those Exynos models are always inferior. I never really get the chance to use those phones, but that's what I'm told in my comment section a lot. And yeah, so overall the processor one here for gaming performance still is great. Like, even if you're somebody who does like play games a lot. Like I said, you're getting really good frames still on Call of Duty, PUBG, Genshin. You're not getting heating problems and stuff like that. And yeah, so the benchmarks and stuff, the benchmarks will say one thing, right? Like, yeah, you're getting, faster performance on that new 8 Elite processor. But as we saw in the comparison, it's not really that big of a deal. So, here is the Wildlife Extreme test here. We still get, decent benchmarks here. But like I said, the benchmarks versus like real world, like it's not slow at all. Like we're super fast doing pretty much anything on this S23. And like I said, it's only going to get smoother and the performance is only going to get better with this One UI 7 update. And let's go ahead and talk about that. So that's also another thing is the phones are becoming very AI heavy, guys. So the Galaxy AI stuff is here on the S23. We have most of the Galaxy AI features here. Circle of Search is here, and whatever else they introduce in the next couple of years will most likely come to the S23 Ultra. Now, here's the thing about this phone. Unfortunately, we did not get the 7 years of MajorOS updates, but this phone still has, a few more updates left, MajorOS updates left. It launched on Android 13. It's on 14. We're going to get Android 15, and it'll get, Android 16. So you still have quite a few updates left. It'll get security patches after that and stuff like that. So overall, software-wise, I wouldn't really worry about this phone because, like I said, One UI 7 is really a big overhaul, so that's really the update to be excited for with this phone. Talking about the photos, so the S23 Ultra still has really good image quality. If you check out the comparisons that I did, what you'll find is that if you just read the comments, most people couldn't tell the difference between the shots. Even if you go back and look at the S24 Ultra to the S25 Ultra, most people can't tell the difference between the shots with the S23 Ultra. The cameras are, to me, pretty much the same. Can you spot differences and stuff like that? Like if I did a full camera comparison, yeah, you could spot small little differences, video improvements here and there and stuff like that. But in general, how most people take photos and videos, you're not going to spot the difference really. So it's got a 200 megapixel standard, 10 megapixel telephoto. That's 3 times optical. And then this one still has the 10 megapixel periscope telephoto at 10 times optical, which Samsung did get rid of. So we don't have that anymore in the newer models. It's a 5 times. And a lot of people like that for portrait shots and stuff like that. You do have a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 8K 24 and 30. And it still has a pretty good selfie cam that can shoot in 12 megapixels at 4K 60. Like I said, the camera upgrade hasn't been like that crazy throughout the years, right? If we're talking about S24, S25. These shots look amazing still, just looking at them. The colors, the zoom photography, everything still looks really good. Like I said, I don't really see a real reason to upgrade from your S23 Ultra as far as cameras go. But like I said, if you're really into cameras and stuff, can you spot that difference? Sure. But it has to be like worth it to upgrade. Like, are those little small differences really worth upgrading? Like I said, you really have to be into like cameras and stuff like that. The fingerprint scanner is still really good. It's been consistently fast for a long time. And then also the speakers, we got them at max volume. So just really crispy speakers. Even if you cover the bottom speaker, like if you're watching content, you cover the bottom speaker, still such loud and clear quality out of the top speaker here. These are great speakers, great bass quality as well too. They sound really solid, so I have no issues with that. And to wrap this up, the battery life is probably like the biggest concern. Well, am I getting significantly better battery life with these newer models? And the answer is actually no. You're getting better battery life if you go to an S24 Ultra, if you go to an S25 Ultra, but it's not significant. As somebody who's been using the S25 Ultra, the S24 Ultra, yeah, the battery life is a little bit better, but the battery life on the S23 is not really bad at all, in my opinion. It's still very good, especially if you have been charging your phone to the 80%. And if you don't know, this is something that you can just do real quick. Turn your maximum protection on to 80%. I'm telling you, your screen on time will be very good for a very long time if you decide to keep this phone for the end of its software lifespan at least. You don't have to worry about screen on time. The battery life is very good on here. So 45-watt charging, I wish it was a little bit faster. Samsung's still doing the 45 watts, and your wireless charging and your reverse wireless charging. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So my opinion, if you have an S23 Ultra, just keep the phone. It's still very good. Just wait for the One UI 7 update. I'm telling you, it'll do a lot in getting rid of that kind of like FOMO from people with the S25 Ultra, because all it is, if you really look at it, it's the software that's really driving the S25 Ultra. And yeah, it's still a great device all around. And if you're thinking about buying one, I think it's a good buy, especially if your budget's around like that $550, $600. It's one of the best phones you can pick at this price range. So what do you guys think?